All right, so Mia, it's great to have you out here. Like we talked last year, we never got to connect. It didn't work out. So yeah, we'll just jump right into it.
Perfect.
So if you could just give us your name and when you joined the Canadian Armed Forces.
Yeah, my name is Mia Lynch, and I joined in May 2003. Tried to get in about 6 months prior to, but I had asthma, so it took a while. But I did a co-op program in Charlottetown, PEI, though, so I was actually there 6 months prior to actually getting enrolled. It took a little while for my actual enrollment date because of childhood asthma, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
I got in for that basic training in between grade 11 and 12, summer vacation.
So what trade and element were you?
I was in the Naval Reserve as an NCI, which is Naval Combat Information Operator. So radars, communications, and eventually was intelligence and evidence gathering. And I was on the mine warships, so we also sweep for mines. That's the whole purpose of our vessel, I guess, that and training.
Were you ever deployed? And if so, where and when?
I wasn't deployed. I was on an operation, which was the Winter Olympics in 2010, Vancouver. Real rough operation. Still in the DAG though.
Yeah.
But no, I volunteered to go over to Afghanistan 7 times, in fact, but I never had the opportunity to go. Hindsight, maybe that was the best, but
yeah.
But you never know.
It has its charms.
That's
but,
right.
It has its pitfalls. So you said you did intelligence, and was that your primary job then, like through most of your career? Or?
No. Luckily, I got to stay alongside most of the time. Found out I was chronically seasick, but that had nothing to do with the small amount of time that I was at sea. For the most part of my career, I was actually teaching basic training, and I taught in both Borden, Ontario, and also in Victoria, BC, and I taught all 3 elements, and also officers and NCMs, as well as Aboriginal youth in the Raven program. And I spent some time doing force protection, so security at the dockyards, and again on both coasts. So that was, yeah, I spent in total less than 2 years on the ship, and that was just dandy for me.
Yeah, so out of like, what, 15
Yeah,
career?
15 years, 4 months, 3 days. Well, not that anybody's counting.
Yeah, no, nobody does.
Yeah.
So what made you want to join the Canadian Armed Forces?
I actually had things in my diary that with the little Marine star cut out from magazines. I guess I was always supposed to be in a uniform because I liked that. I think I just liked the power part of it as a kid and liked to help people. But the actual story of why I got in is because I was suspended from school with one of my buddies. And I always was in competition with him, whether he knew it or not. And his mentor said you should do something else besides getting in fights and join the Navy. So he came back and he told me that he was joining the Navy. I said, me too. Asked my mother to drive me down to the Navy place. She laughed, said I can't stay in school. You probably can't stay in the military. I won that competition because they lost his optometrist note. So he couldn't go to basic training that same summer as I did. Yeah, but that's really why I got in, and then I stayed in basic training regardless of the fact that I had already won, because everybody thought that I couldn't. Mom said she'd see me in 2 weeks. I said 2 months. People were calling me G.I. Jane and just laughing at the fact that they didn't think I'd have the discipline to do so. So I wanted to prove them wrong. That was it. But it ended up with a 15-year career.
Yeah, no, it's not bad for starting off.
That's right.
Sure. So what was the highlight of your career? If you had to pick kind of one moment or time or experience that was the best?
There are a lot, to be quite honest, but the first Raven course that I taught, which is the Aboriginal youth out west in BC, and by this time I'd already been teaching basic training for 4 or 5 years. And so I thought, I've seen it all. Like, not much is going to kind of send me spinning. But it was a completely different bag of worms. And, a lot of these youth were coming from places I couldn't imagine. A lot of them not even having English as their first language. the condensed course. It was the same basic training course basically as I would take, only crammed into 6 weeks. That they have so many different struggles than you and I would have. And their grad parade, I was a blubbering mess. I've never felt so much pride, and also so happy that, if for nothing else, these youth proved to themselves that they were so capable, beyond capable, and could have that in their back pocket. And that was, that will forever be remembered. It was an awesome moment.
Yeah, I taught for many years. Same thing. Like we helping people realize their potential and overcome things is, for me was the most amazing part too.
That's right. Yeah. I loved that position. I would have done it for the rest of my life if I could. Yeah. Because the people that really want to be there, and the ones that do struggle but come out, shining star, or even just to meet the bare minimum, but they never thought they could accomplish something like that, is it's amazing. Yeah. Like, I have all the time in the world for that, and I loved it. I'd do it again and again. Sorry, there's a lot of unwanted passengers here.
It's all good.
But it's all good.
Perfect. So when did you leave the forces and why?
September 1st was my release date of 2018, and I was medically released. I could have stayed until September 2020, but I decided to get out when I did. I felt myself not being as passionate anymore and kind of becoming disgruntled, and just wanted to kind of get on with life and leave kind of my footprint in the sand there on a good note, as opposed to everybody remembering my mistakes or kind of me being in a shitty mood, whatever it may be, and try and find what I love and get on with life, I guess. But I was released medically for a diagnosis of severe depression and PTSD. That was service relatable. So
it's funny you mentioned the leaving on the best note you can, and leaving before you kind of get to that point where people just remember you being really angry or
That's right.
I unfortunately didn't achieve that. I had that time where I was very passionate about things that were going on and trying to fix things, but I got to that point where I was so combative and contrary to everything, and so confrontational, that I essentially I fought my way out of influence.
Right.
And unfortunately I left on that downside of things where I couldn't even function.
I found myself just so stuck on a point. I was combative, and even if I had something, I think, good to say or a way to solve a problem, I wasn't able to project it. I wasn't able to actually come across professional. It was just, Mia's yelling again. Yeah. Like, nobody's hearing me anymore, because it's just, Mia's just going to be spinning, and, just let her do her thing and carry on with your day. Yeah. I was no longer able to actually, come to the table with a problem and a solution and be a proper petty officer and not act like a child, because I was hurt and I was scared, and just kind of wanted everybody to hear me in the things that I felt were wrong. But it was because I also felt wronged and hurt, and I was scared. And so my reaction was to scream and cry, and it didn't come across how I wanted it to. And I was able to recognize that after a while, and it was through the help of some of the mentors that I've had, kind of take a step back, Mia, breathe. And I'm like, well, I am, and I'm trying to, I just need, these people were wrong. They have to know it, but you have to, take your emotion out of it. And when I found that I wasn't able to do that, and be productive anymore, then I knew it was time to get out and do something else.
Yeah, I got stuck in that cycle a little longer, I think, before I finally realized it. I found I couldn't pick my battles.
That's right.
This is wrong and it's a huge deal, we need to fix it. And this is wrong and it's a huge deal and we need to fix it. And I also couldn't empathize with the other person across the table.
Right.
And it's like, if you don't act immediately and fix this completely right now, we're on opposite teams kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like it was that very black and white. If you don't recognize this is a problem absolutely and fix it absolutely right now, then you're part of the problem.
Right. Yeah. And your problems, or the fact that this is standing in the way right now, like, I mean, on the priority list, this has to be dealt with first. We'll get to you, we're hearing you, but we can't, we're not dropping everything because you're screaming about it.
Yeah.
And then, then you just scream more and you think that everybody is out to get you.
Yeah.
And, maybe that's the case for some people, but a lot of people, that's not the case. And if we weren't so emotionally charged at that time, we would have been able to see that.
Yeah, it takes all the objectivity out of it.
That's right.
Yeah, you can't see you just see this. Yeah, it's like for me it was a spiral, and it got more and more. The thing that really got me was anything to do with the soldiers who worked for me.
Yep.
Anything I saw that was in any way taking away from them or not being what I thought was good leadership to them. I can look at all the things I got really upset about and say they were legitimate problems.
Right.
And they are, some of them are very big problems, but yeah, I essentially, I shouted about them for so long, I moved myself right out of influence of having anything to do with solving the problem.
I did the exact same way. I seen a lot of issues. Yeah, if I had any of my subordinates especially, or because I was so vocal, people would come to me with their problems and concerns, which is great. But, I'm just that little fish in the pond, and I was just screaming so much. I was like just retracting everybody. And I still agree that the concerns I brought up were legit and should have been addressed. I don't think it should have come to a lot of it already. And I also was screaming though about, the mental health system in the military, and instead of being able to properly push that forward, which I did try, and then that's when I became belligerent. It was just like you said, it was a spiral. You're just spinning tires. And by the end of it, I was just that crazy person, like screaming outside of the hospital, like they're not going to pay attention to you. They're just like, this one needs help, but they're not giving me the help. And it's unfortunate is putting it nicely, but I don't regret bringing up the issues that I did. And I still to this day would go to bat for them, but certainly in a more professional way.
So a thought just kind of occurred to me there. And we haven't talked about your injury at all or any of those circumstances. But it just occurred to me that as we talked about that spiral and getting really passionate about those problems and still feeling they are problems. You know what? You get the fly dance. Anybody who's ever been in the field is going to look, they're like, I know what's happening right now. So it's all good. If you need to take a break for a minute, you let me know and we can stop. So
there's more coming. They're having babies.
They're having babies. They are. I didn't think they'd swim this far out. Fly this far. Any of those things, those issues that you got really passionate about and that you found you couldn't keep even about, and again, I had the same thing. Yeah. And just you talking about it and us talking about it made me think, and I can't believe I never kind of made this conclusion before. The things that I got the most upset about and those problems I was bringing forward all had something to do with what happened to me or the things that affected me while I was a soldier, that they were probably things that done to me that weren't right, or things I experienced that weren't right. And they just kept getting bigger and bigger because I never dealt with them. And then when I started to care for these soldiers who were under me and I saw them being potentially affected by them, that's where I went off my friggin' rock. Was that kind of maybe the same for you, or a lot of those struggles?
Because I guess, as I'm sure you were as well, and many of us, I'll deal with my own problems. I don't want to become a burden on other people, and I don't want to bring it up and be the weak person, or the MIR commando, and how do we ask for help? But when I would see somebody else struggling with something that I struggled with, I did not want them to go through it. I know how much pain I was dealing with inside, or trying to deal with inside. And I did not want people to get to that point. And I mean, it was to the point of almost no return. Somehow I returned for me, and I'd cry for them because I didn't want them to feel that way.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to be able to get help before they turned to what I did,
Yeah.
Which I'm referring to attempted suicide, because it just got too much, and I didn't know how to ask for the help, and I also kind of thought that I was beyond help at that point.
Yeah.
So I didn't want anybody to have to go through that. So that's why it became, I was so aggressive about not having it happen to anybody else.
It's funny, isn't it? Like, and again, I never thought of it until we were just talking, but once you start caring for those other people, you can, and that's kind of the whole premise of what I'm doing is I see my friends with some of the same struggles I have, and I don't judge them for it, but I judge myself.
That's right.
And I never even thought of that whole thing. All those things I got so warped up about, a lot of them are things that affected me or happened to me or affected those I love.
Mm-hmm.
And I internalized the pain and just dealt with it and sucked it up.
Right.
But when I see that starting to affect other people, or I see those patterns that I see, like, okay, that could potentially affect this person if that continues.
Right.
I could not remain objective. That's when I fell apart. And
Yeah.
I never even drew that parallel until right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just so scared of any repercussion, and and being looked at as weak, or having my stories exposed, I guess, because I'd be embarrassed and stuff. And I was always trying to put on this strong front, which apparently I did a very good job at for a long time. But I don't know, I'm kind of losing my train of thought because I get really passionate about it too. But I just couldn't stomach standing by and seeing somebody else have it done to them. And I'd recognize it because I went through it,
Yeah.
And I feel like I knew what I could have done, or what I think should have been done with regards to my stuff. So I wanted to just do anything in my power and go to bat for them. I didn't care about my repercussions anymore. And I'd be the first person to promote, the mental health system and go get help. And it's not weak. And, if you, and this is the truth, but I would even use the analogy of, if you have a broken leg, you're going to go to the hospital, Everybody would think that's silly if you don't go to the hospital and the bone's sticking out your leg, right? But when your brain is broken, you can't see that.
Yeah.
And it's still, to this day, unfortunately, still kind of looked at as weak. Like, just get up out of bed.
Yeah.
Just go, because I can't see your injury. It doesn't exist. You'd hold open a door for somebody that is limping.
Yeah.
But people have no regard for, the fact that getting out of bed today was the hardest thing you could have imagined. The stigma has to stop, but and through people like you doing interviews like this, hopefully it will break some of the barriers, because I'm not ashamed anymore. And I'm passionate about breaking the stigma. I'm passionate about helping others, even if that's just, that they're still quiet, but they hear that they're not the only one going through it, because everybody knows that they're not the only one that's ever been assaulted, or ever the only one that's ever dealt with depression. But it's hard to see that whenever you're actually in it. So it's not that you want others to be in pain with you, but it still is comforting to hear that somebody else understands that, your memory is gone, or you laid in bed for days on end, and going to the bathroom is literally something you debate maybe doing in your bed, because walking across the hallway is
Like, seems overwhelming.
That's right. Like, I can't make it.
Yeah.
You know, like 7 days I spent in bed, and what I ate was whatever snacks I had
Within reach.
stored in my bedside stand, which is quite a lot actually. But the water I drank out of the sink in the bathroom, and I probably only used the bathroom like once a day, and I'd be crying, but so ashamed. Like, how do you tell somebody, no, I can't get up?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, just pull your pants up and get out here. And you do have to eventually, but it's so not easy. That's